We know that fallen angels causes giants. But giants cannot reproduce. So you wonder, you keep seeing them. Sometimes you think that we have basketball players, they're pretty tall. One of them is like 7 foot 7 inches, I believe, almost 8 foot. But Goliath was bigger than that. In fact, we're going to find out a little bit more about Goliath as we read. In 1 Samuel 17:1 it says, "Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shokah, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shokah and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath." Now I want you to see this, Goliath of Gath. Goliath's father was Gath. Gath was a fallen angel. And his sons were all giants. There went out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Well, 6 cubits and a span a lot of times doesn't mean anything to us when we're reading the Bible. So a lot of times you have to look up what that was. 1 cubit is usually from the elbow to the tip of your finger. Depending on how big you are, it's around 21 inches, 1 cubit. A span is half a cubit. So this would make Goliath approximately 11 feet 4 inches. Now that's minimum. That's taking the average length of an elbow to the tip of the finger. He could have been a lot bigger than that. But he's at least almost 12 feet tall. Now, I don't know about you, but if I seen someone that was 12 feet tall and they weren't skinny as a stick, and they wanted to fight with me, I knew that I'd probably be going to get my gun. Because otherwise I wouldn't have a chance. Well, we're going to find out what happened with David and Goliath. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head. And he was armed with a coat of mail. So the coat of mail is that metal on top of that metal, like fish scale. And so it would stop most spears and arrows and everything else. And the weight was 5,000 shekels of brass. So the coat alone weighed 156 pounds. Right? And he had greaves of brass upon his legs. So it wasn't just the coat, he had brass on his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weight was 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. So the whole spear is supposed to weigh about 37 pounds. You ever seen those people throw javelins? I bet you they couldn't throw that javelin very far. That's 37 pounds of weight just in a spear. His whole armor is thought to have weighed 272 pounds and 13 ounces. Now he was able to war, to run, to fight all day wearing that. Now you have to imagine, do you think he was weak? No. Do you think he was skinny, like a stick? No. This was a giant, well-built, muscular, and this weight was nothing to this giant. And he stood and he cried into the armies of Israel and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and to kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. Do you believe he was telling the truth? No. If he gets killed, that doesn't stop the war. They're still going to fight. Everything he said was a lie. When you deal with the devil, there's no truth. There's no agreement. Everything that the devil says is a lie. He wants to make you think that there's an agreement somewhere down the line, but he has no intention of making any agreement with you. His intention only is to win. Goliath said it because he felt that he couldn't lose. So, the Philistines and the rest of them, they were behind him with what he's saying, but they weren't going to stand behind what he said if he lost. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul was a head and shoulder taller than just about any other Israelite. Saul was tall. He was a big man. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Do you think anyone was pointing their finger at someone else to go against a giant? You go, you go, you go. Now David was the son of Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse. And he had 8 sons. I want you to remember that he had 8 sons. Because there were only so many in the field that was going to battle Goliath or fight with the Philistines. They weren't 8 sons. There was only like 3 or 4 of them. So we're going to read some more. And he had 8 sons, and the man went among men of an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went out and followed Saul to the battle. So only 3 eldest sons went out to battle. Probably one of those sons was one that Samuel seen and said, oh, this has got to be the one I should be anointing because he was big and muscular. But not so. Now the name of his 3 sons that went to battle was Eliab, the firstborn, and next to him was Abinadab, and the third was Shammah. David was the youngest. So he had 8 sons. David was the 8th son. he was the youngest of all the sons. And David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, presenting himself 40 days. So now you can see, here's the Israelites, and they're listening to someone talk bad about God for 40 days. Wow. And you wonder, why didn't anyone stand up? Of all the Israelites, Saul and all of them. And Jesse said unto David his son, take thou for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. So see, they're still fighting the Philistines, and they haven't taken the challenge of Goliath. But they are fighting. And David rose up early in the morning and then left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench as the host was going forth to fight, and shadowed for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words. And this time, David heard them. Now, when you are a believer in Jesus, and you see what Jesus has done in your life, the more and more people talk bad about Jesus, the more that your hair should be raising up in the back of your neck. But we don't fight the physical fight as much as we do the spiritual fight. We let God do the fighting. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him. This guy was huge. He was when we say giant, he was a giant. And they were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man that has come up? Look! He's huge! Have you seen him? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine? Statue, being a giant, did not make any difference to David, because he had seen what God had done in his life. For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. Why? Because David's doing what he should have done. Why camest thou down hither, and with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, but thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, what have I now done? What's wrong with you? Isn't he the enemy, Goliath? Are we supposed to be fighting on the same side? You're angry at me because I want to do something about this Philistine? David said, what have I done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another and spake after the same manner, and the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul. And he sent for him. Did I have somebody who's not scared of Goliath? Saul, the whole army's scared of Goliath. He heard someone speaking that's not afraid at all? Get that guy. I want to talk to him. So he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth. So David's going to give a testimony what God can do. David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear. Not just a lion by itself, a lion and a bear, and took the lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. He convinced Saul, your testimony, no matter how incredible or afraid people can be of certain things, your testimony can take the fear out and the belief in. That's how healing comes. Jesus said, do you believe I can do this? It's because they seen and believe. Your testimony of what Jesus has done helps people believe. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these. These are what you fight with. I fight with what God gives me. Don't fight with what other people have. Fight with what God gives you. For I have not proved them, and David put them off. And he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into my hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the hosts of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, and that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran, stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until they come to the valley, and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way of Cherim, even unto Gath, and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. Let's go back and see why David chose 5 smooth stones. In 1 Samuel 17:40, and he took his staff in his hand, and he chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. Goliath had 4 brothers. David was ready not just to kill Goliath, but his 4 brothers. Whoever was going to stand in the way of the Lord, he was ready for. Let's read about them. 2 Samuel 21:15, moreover the Philistines had yet warred with Israel, and David went down, and his servants went with him, and fought against the Philistines. And David waxed faint. You got to remember, David's old now. He'd already killed Goliath. He's been warring and killing Philistines practically his whole life now. And now he's old. And he's fighting in battles, but now he's weak. He's getting faint. And Ishbenob, which was the of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear weighed 300 shekels of brass in weight, he being girded with a new sword, thought to have slain David. So they thought that he had killed David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, secured him and smote the Philistine and killed him. That's one of David's men, killed the giant. Then the men of David swear unto him, saying, Thou shalt go no more out with us to battle. We don't want you going out no more. You're our leader, you're our hero, but you're old, you're faint, you're weak. You can't fight like you used to anymore, even with God on your side. Let God be on our side and do your battle for you. Okay. So thou shalt go no more out with us to battle, that thou quench not the light of Israel. And it came to pass after this, that there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbecai, the Hushathite, slew Saph, which was the son of the giant. So we have another of David's men killing another giant of Goliath. Brothers. There was again a battle of God with the Philistines, where Elihana, the son of Jerahmeam, a Bethlehemite, slew the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was yet another battle in Gath, where there was a man of great stature that had on every hand 6 fingers and 6 toes, 24 in number, and he also was born to the giant. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimeah, the brother of David, slew him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. Now David didn't kill all 5 when he picked up those 5 stones, but their destiny had already been chosen by God, and they were destroyed by David and his men. David didn't have weak men. They were strong men. And one of these times we'll talk and we'll read the word about David's men, how strong and big they were. But God and Jesus is good. Our testimony is what brings faith. And your faith can bring healing and win. And it's true in Revelation. It says, the devil is defeated by the testimonies of the saints. God and Jesus is good.